Maya Chen pressed her face against the transport window, watching as the massive structure of Nexus Academy grew larger with each passing moment. The academy floated in space like a crystalline city, its bioluminescent towers reaching out in impossible directions. Students from across the galaxy would arrive here, the brightest minds from hundreds of worlds, all competing for a chance to join the Galactic Defense Corps. She pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders. Unlike the other passengers who wore expensive adaptive clothing that shifted colors with their moods, Maya's simple, earth-made garments marked her as an outsider. The Zephyrian next to her had skin that shimmered like mercury, while the crystalloid across the aisle communicated through harmonic vibrations that made the air itself sing. Maya was just human, just ordinary. "Attention passengers," the ship's AI announced in perfect universal standard. "Docking at Nexus Academy will commence in 5 minutes. Please prepare for gravity transition." Maya's stomach lurched as the artificial gravity shifted. Around her, alien students chatted excitedly in their native languages. She caught fragments of conversation about family legacies, prestigious bloodlines, and inherited abilities that defied physics. Her own acceptance letter felt heavy in her pocket, a simple piece of synthetic paper that had arrived at her family's cramped apartment on Earth Station 7. The docking bay buzzed with activity as hundreds of new students disembarked. Maya followed the crowd through corridors that seemed to bend space itself, past viewing ports that showed distant galaxies spinning like jewels in the void. Holographic signs floated in the air, directing students to processing centers based on their species' requirements. "Humans this way," called a tall figure with blue skin and 4 arms. Maya joined a much smaller group, perhaps 20 students total. She recognized a few faces from the news feeds, children of Earth's political elite and military commanders. They moved with confidence, their expensive neural interfaces glinting at their temples. "Welcome to Nexus Academy," the instructor continued. "I am Commander Vextar of the Altarian Defense Force. You have been selected from billions of applicants across the galaxy. Here, you will learn to harness technologies and abilities that will make you the elite defenders of galactic civilization." Maya's hands trembled slightly. She had scored perfectly on every entrance exam, but she knew the real reason she was here. Earth needed representation, and the Academy had quotas to fill. She was a diversity admission, nothing more. The group was led through orientation chambers where students received their room assignments and class schedules. Maya's scanner beeped, and her information appeared on a floating display. Maya Chen, human, Earth Colony Station 7, academic track, theoretical xenotechnology. Roommate assignment, Zara Nixtel, Vegan Collective. Her roommate turned out to be a green-skinned humanoid with large dark eyes and tendrils instead of hair. Zara communicated through a combination of telepathic pulses and verbal speech, creating an oddly musical effect. "You are from Earth," Zara observed, her mental voice carrying notes of curiosity. "I have studied human culture. Your species is known for persistence and creativity, though you lack the advanced neural architecture of most spacefaring races." Maya unpacked her few belongings into the small storage unit beside her bed. The room itself was a marvel, with walls that could display any environment and furniture that adapted to the user's physiology. "I suppose we make up for it in other ways," she said quietly. "Perhaps," Zara agreed, though her tone suggested polite skepticism. Their first classes began the next morning. Maya found herself struggling to keep up as instructors demonstrated technologies that seemed like magic. Professor Kethvar, a massive insectoid being, showed the class how to manipulate gravitational fields with thought alone. Students from advanced civilizations grasped the concepts immediately, their enhanced neural pathways allowing them to interface directly with quantum computers. Maya sat in the back, taking notes the old-fashioned way with a simple tablet. While other students created miniature black holes and bent space-time, she watched and learned, memorizing every detail. Her human brain might be slower, but it was thorough. During combat training, the differences became even more apparent. The Zephyrian students could phase through solid matter. The crystalloids generated energy shields with their crystalline exoskeletons. A student from the Hive Collective could split his consciousness among multiple bodies simultaneously. Maya dodged and rolled, using techniques learned in Earth's crowded urban environments. While others relied on exotic abilities, she used physics and leverage, momentum and timing. Her instructor, a scarred veteran named Sergeant Torvex, watched her with growing interest. "Interesting approach, human," he rumbled after she managed to disable a much larger opponent through a series of precise movements. "Your species compensates for biological limitations through tactical thinking." "We've had to," Maya replied, breathing hard. "Humans learned early that we couldn't overpower most threats, so we learned to outthink them." The weeks that followed established a clear hierarchy among the students. At the top were the legacy admissions, beings from families that had produced generations of galactic heroes. They had access to genetic enhancements, neural implants, and technologies that most civilizations couldn't even comprehend. Maya found herself grouped with the other quota students, representatives from species deemed necessary for diplomatic balance, but lacking in true potential. They were tolerated, occasionally pitied, but never taken seriously. She spent her evenings in the Academy's vast library, a space that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously. While other students socialized in the recreation centers that could simulate any environment in the galaxy, Maya studied. She read about technologies from civilizations that had fallen before humans had even discovered fire. She learned about the fundamental forces that held the universe together and the mathematical principles that governed faster-than-light travel. "You study much for someone with no future in the Corps," observed Dexion, a golden-skinned student whose father commanded an entire sector fleet. He had stopped by Maya's study alcove with several friends in tow. "Humans rarely advance beyond junior administrative positions." Maya didn't look up from her quantum mechanics textbook. "I'm here to learn, not to make friends with people who see me as a quota fill." "Careful, human," warned Silvara, a student whose species could manipulate molecular structures at will. "Some of us will remember attitudes like yours when we're giving orders." After they left, Zara appeared at Maya's side. Over the weeks, her roommate had become something like a friend, one of the few students who treated Maya as an equal. "You should be more diplomatic," Zara advised, her mental voice tinged with concern. "Connections matter in the Corps. Without allies, even the most capable individuals find themselves assigned to remote observation posts." "Maybe that's where I belong," Maya said, though something in her voice suggested she didn't entirely believe it. The first major test came during their xenotechnology practical exam. Students were presented with a device from an extinct civilization and given 4 hours to determine its function and operating principles. The test was considered a measure of intuitive understanding, the ability to comprehend alien thought processes. Maya studied her assigned device, a crystalline sphere covered in symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Around her, other students interfaced with their devices using advanced scanning equipment and neural links. Some began to operate their devices within minutes, demonstrating natural affinity for alien technology. Maya approached the problem differently. She couldn't interface directly with the device, so she observed it from every angle, noting patterns in the shifting symbols. She applied principles from human archaeology, looking for recurring motifs and logical structures. While others relied on technological shortcuts, she used pure reasoning. Hours passed. Other students completed their exams and left, shooting pitying glances at Maya, who remained hunched over her device with nothing but a notebook and her own thoughts. With 30 minutes remaining, something clicked. The symbols weren't instructions at all. They were a puzzle, a test of pattern recognition designed by a species that valued logic over intuition. Maya began pressing symbols in a specific sequence, following the mathematical progression she had identified. The device hummed to life, projecting a complex holographic display that showed the structure of space-time itself. Maya had activated what appeared to be a miniature universe simulator, technology that even the Academy's professors had never seen function before. Professor Kethvar's multiple eyes fixed on Maya's workstation. "Remarkable. This device has been in our collection for 3 centuries. No one has successfully operated it before." The professor's words carried through the examination hall, drawing stares from students and instructors alike. Maya felt dozens of eyes on her as she continued working with the device, discovering controls that allowed manipulation of physical constants within the simulated universe. "How did you determine the activation sequence?" Professor Kethavar asked. "I couldn't interface with it directly," Maya explained, "so I had to understand the creator's thought processes. The symbols follow a mathematical progression based on prime numbers, but arranged in a pattern that reflects their creator's sensory perception. They experience time differently than we do, so their logic follows non-linear pathways." The professor's insectoid features conveyed something like surprise. "You deduced their temporal perception from symbolic arrangements?" "It's just pattern recognition," Maya said, though she could see the amazement in the faces around her. Humans are good at finding patterns in chaos. Word of Maya's success spread quickly through the Academy. Students who had barely acknowledged her existence suddenly wanted to know more about human analytical methods. Instructors began paying attention to her unique approaches to problems that others solved through technological advantages. But not everyone was pleased with Maya's newfound recognition. "One lucky guess doesn't change anything," Dexion told his circle of followers during their meal break. "Humans are still the weakest species in the Corps. She'll fail when it really matters." Maya tried to ignore the whispers and stares. She focused on her studies, diving deeper into subjects that fascinated her. The Academy's quantum engineering courses revealed the mathematical beauty underlying faster-than-light travel. Xenopsychology classes taught her to understand the thought patterns of species whose minds operated on completely different principles than human consciousness. She began to notice things that others missed. During a tactical simulation, she identified a flaw in what was considered a perfect Zephyrian battle formation. While studying ancient texts in comparative civilizations class, she spotted mathematical errors that had gone unnoticed for centuries. "Your pattern recognition abilities are quite remarkable," observed Dr. Lysander, the Academy's chief researcher. The elderly Altarian had called Maya to his office after she had corrected several historical documents during a routine assignment. "Have you considered specializing in archaeological xenotechnology?" "I hadn't really thought about specialization yet," Maya admitted. "I'm still trying to prove I belong here at all." "My dear student," Dr. Lysander said, his forearms moving in a gesture that conveyed gentle amusement. "You have already proven that. The question now is what you intend to do with your abilities." That evening, Maya sat in the observation deck, watching stars wheel past the Academy's orbit. The galaxy stretched out before her, countless civilizations among billions of stars. Somewhere out there were threats that the Galactic Defense Corps stood against, dangers that required the best minds and strongest beings the galaxy could produce. She thought about her family back on Earth Station 7, working ordinary jobs and living ordinary lives. They had been proud when she was accepted to Nexus Academy, though she knew they didn't entirely understand what it meant. Earth was still a junior member of galactic civilization, its people seen as useful but unremarkable. "Deep thoughts?" Zara's mental voice interrupted her contemplation. Her roommate settled beside her, tendrils moving in patterns that indicated curiosity. "Just wondering if I really belong here," Maya said. Everyone else has these incredible abilities. They can manipulate matter with their minds, interface directly with quantum computers, survive in hard vacuum. All I have is pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is how intelligence began, Zara replied thoughtfully. My people believe that consciousness itself is simply the universe's way of recognizing patterns in itself. Perhaps what you see as a limitation is actually humanity's greatest strength. Maya considered this as she watched a transport ship dock with the Academy, bringing new supplies and messages from across the galaxy. The ship's navigation systems relied on pattern recognition to plot courses through hyperspace. The Galactic Communication Network used pattern algorithms to translate between thousands of different languages and thought processes. Everything in the galaxy depended on patterns, on the ability to find order in chaos and meaning in complexity. Maya had assumed that her human limitations made her inferior to her classmates. But what if those same limitations had forced humanity to develop abilities that others took for granted? The next morning brought news that would change everything for Maya and her fellow students. Professor Kethvar announced during their xenotechnology seminar that the Academy had received a distress signal from an archaeological expedition in the Void sector. The team was investigating ruins on Kareth Prime when they discovered something that has left their xenotechnology specialists baffled, the professor explained. The expedition leader specifically requested assistance from Nexus Academy. This represents an opportunity for advanced students to participate in actual fieldwork. Maya's heart raced. Field assignment during the first year was almost unheard of. Only the most exceptional students were ever considered for such opportunities. Selection will be based on performance in theoretical xenotechnology and pattern analysis, Professor Kethavar continued. The expedition requires individuals capable of understanding alien thought processes and technological principles without relying on direct interface capabilities. Maya realized that the professor was looking directly at her. Around the classroom, other students began to murmur among themselves. The criteria seemed specifically designed to favor analytical thinking over technological advantages. After class, Maya found herself surrounded by students who had previously ignored her existence. "You'll apply for the field assignment, won't you?" asked Velthar, a crystalloid whose family controlled mining operations across 3 star systems. "Your performance on the ancient device examination was quite impressive." Maya sensed undercurrents in the conversation. These students weren't suddenly interested in her abilities. They were calculating, trying to determine if associating with her might provide advantages in the selection process. "I haven't decided yet," Maya said carefully. "Of course you should apply," Dexion interjected, appearing with his usual entourage. "It would be entertaining to watch a human attempt actual field work, though I suppose someone needs to carry equipment for the real xenotechnology specialists." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. But before she could respond, Sergeant Torvex's voice cut through the crowd. "Chen, my office. Now." The combat instructor's tone brooked no argument. Maya followed him through corridors lined with trophies from conflicts across the galaxy, past displays showing the Corps' greatest victories and most heroic sacrifices. Torvex's office reflected his personality, functional, disciplined, and decorated only with mementos from fallen comrades. The scarred veteran gestured for Maya to sit while he remained standing, his massive frame casting shadows across the small room. "You've been making waves." "Human," he said without preamble. "Some people are impressed, others are threatened. Both reactions can be dangerous." "I'm just trying to do my best, sir," Maya replied. "Your best is apparently quite good," Torvex acknowledged. "But excellence without wisdom can be fatal in the field. Tell me, why did you come to Nexus Academy?" Maya considered the question carefully. "To prove that humans belong in the Corps, sir. To show that we can contribute something meaningful to galactic defense. Wrong answer, Torvex said bluntly. You came here because the galaxy needs what humanity offers, whether other species realize it or not. The question is, do you understand what that is? Maya struggled to find words. Pattern recognition? Analytical thinking? Stubbornness, Torvex said. Humans refuse to accept that anything is impossible. Other species see limitations and adapt to them. Humans see limitations and break them. The galaxy has never encountered anything quite like human determination. He activated a holographic display showing galactic maps marked with conflict zones and exploration sectors. The core faces threats that can't be solved with superior technology or exotic abilities. Sometimes the key to victory is simply refusing to give up when any rational being would surrender. Maya stared at the display, seeing patterns in the distribution of conflicts and threats. There was something there, a structure that suggested purpose behind seemingly random events. You see it, don't you? Torvex observed. The pattern in the chaos. That's why you belong here, human. Not as a quota fill or a diplomatic necessity, but because the galaxy needs minds that can see what others miss. That evening, Maya submitted her application for the field assignment to Kareth Prime. She had no guarantee of selection, but Torvex's words had sparked something inside her. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Academy, she felt like she might actually belong. The selection announcement came 3 days later during the morning assembly. Maya sat with the other applicants in the Academy's Great Hall, watching as Professor Kethvar prepared to read the chosen names. Around her, students from the most prestigious families in the galaxy waited with confident expressions, certain of their selection. After careful consideration of academic performance, analytical capabilities, and field readiness assessments, the professor began, his compound eyes scanning the assembled students. The following individuals have been selected for the Kareth Prime expedition. He read through a list of names that surprised no one. Dexion, whose genetic enhancements made him nearly indestructible. Silvara, who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Velthar, whose crystalline structure allowed direct interface with most ancient technologies. Maya felt her hopes sinking with each predictable selection. The final team member, Professor Kethvar continued, will serve as the expedition's xenoarchaeological analyst. This position requires exceptional pattern recognition abilities and the capacity to understand alien thought processes without technological assistance. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Maya Chen. The hall fell silent. Maya heard her name echo through the vast space while hundreds of alien faces turned to stare at her. Whispers began immediately, spreading like ripples through the assembled students. Did he say the human? There must be some mistake. She's just a first-year quota admission. Maya stood on unsteady legs, accepting the data tablet that contained her mission briefings and travel documents. Her hands shook as she walked past rows of shocked faces, past students whose families had served in the Corps for centuries and who had never imagined being passed over for a human. Later that evening, as Maya packed her field gear, Zara helped her understand what had just happened. This assignment is significant beyond what you realize, her roommate explained, her mental voice carrying undertones of excitement and concern. Kareth Prime is not simply another archaeological site. The planet was home to the Architects, a civilization that disappeared over 50 million years ago. Maya paused in her packing. The Architects? They built the hyperspace lanes that connect every major star system in the galaxy, Zara continued. Their technology forms the foundation of modern interstellar civilization. If the expedition has found something new, something the specialists cannot understand. The implications were staggering. Maya realized she wasn't just joining a routine field assignment. She was being sent to investigate technology that predated most current galactic civilizations, created by beings whose capabilities remained largely mysterious even after millions of years of study. Why me? Maya asked. though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "Because you see patterns that others miss," Zara replied simply. "Because you approach problems without preconceptions about what is possible or impossible." The next morning, Maya boarded a core transport vessel along with her teammates. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering, capable of crossing the galaxy in a matter of days through controlled jumps between hyperspace nodes. But the technology that made such travel possible had been discovered, not invented. Humanity and every other spacefaring civilization were still trying to understand principles that the architects had mastered eons ago. Captain Zextai, the expedition leader, briefed the team during their journey to Kareth Prime. The grizzled Altarian had been leading archaeological expeditions for over 2 centuries, uncovering artifacts that had advanced galactic technology by thousands of years. 3 weeks ago, my advanced team discovered a previously unknown complex beneath the northern ice cap, he explained, displaying holographic images of the dig site. The structure appears intact, which is remarkable given the planet's geological history. Maya studied the images, noting architectural details that seemed familiar yet alien. The architects had built with mathematical precision that human minds could appreciate, even if the underlying purposes remained mysterious. Initial scans suggest the complex contains active technology, Captain Zextai continued. However, our xenotechnology specialists have been unable to interface with any of the discovered systems. The artifacts appear to be waiting for some form of activation that we have not yet identified. Dexion leaned forward, his enhanced neural implants gleaming. Surely with proper scanning equipment and direct interface protocols, we can decode any alien system. That approach has been tried extensively, the captain replied with barely concealed irritation. The architect technology does not respond to conventional interface methods. It requires a more subtle approach. Maya felt the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. Her teammates clearly expected her to fail, viewing her inclusion as an administrative error that would soon be corrected. But Captain Zextai's words suggested that traditional approaches had already proven inadequate. Kareth Prime appeared on their view screens as a world of breathtaking beauty and terrible desolation. Ice sheets covered continents that had once supported billions of inhabitants. Ancient cities lay buried beneath kilometers of frozen atmosphere, their spires occasionally breaking through the surface like monuments to vanished greatness. The expedition base had been constructed near the dig site, a collection of environmental domes connected by heated tunnels. Maya's first sight of the excavation took her breath away. The architect's structure emerged from the ice like a crystalline flower, its surfaces reflecting light in patterns that seemed to shift with the observer's perspective. "Magnificent, isn't it?" observed Dr. Kaylin, the expedition's chief archaeologist. The elderly Vegan had spent her entire career studying architect sites throughout the galaxy. "After 50 years of research, I still discover new details every time I look at their work." Maya approached the structure's main entrance, noting how the proportions seemed designed for beings roughly humanoid in stature. The architects had possessed physical forms, not unlike those of many current galactic species, yet their mental architecture had operated on principles that remained largely incomprehensible. "The complex extends at least 12 levels below the surface," Dr. Kaylin continued. "Each level contains chambers filled with dormant technology. We've cataloged over 3,000 individual artifacts, but we've successfully activated perhaps a dozen." Inside the structure, Maya found herself in corridors that seemed to stretch beyond their physical dimensions. The walls themselves appeared to be constructed from a single crystalline material that conducted both light and information through pathways too complex for conventional analysis. Her teammates immediately began deploying sophisticated scanning equipment, attempting to map the structure's internal organization and identify power sources. Maya took a different approach, walking slowly through the corridors and observing details that might escape technological analysis. The architecture followed patterns that reminded her of human mathematical sequences, but implemented through principles that suggested fundamentally different ways of understanding space and time. Doorways opened and closed based on proximity, but not in ways that suggested simple motion sensors. Rather, the structure seemed aware of the intentions of those moving through it. "Fascinating," Maya murmured, running her hand along a wall surface that felt warm despite the sub-zero external temperature. "You sense it too," Dr. Kaylin said, appearing beside her with an expression of curiosity. "The structure's awareness. Most visitors assume it's automated security, but it's something more subtle than that." Maya nodded, though she struggled to articulate what she was experiencing. The building felt alive in a way that had nothing to do with biological processes. It was as if the architects had embedded consciousness itself into the mathematical relationships that defined the structure's geometry. On the third level, they encountered the central mystery that had brought Maya to Kareth Prime. A vast chamber contained what could only be described as a three-dimensional mandala, patterns of energy that moved through crystalline matrices in configurations that hurt to look at directly. "We call it the navigation chamber," Dr. Kaylin explained. "These patterns appear to represent hyperspace routes connecting every known galaxy. But there are pathways shown here that lead to regions we haven't discovered yet." Maya stared at the display, her mind automatically seeking patterns in the flowing energy streams. The mathematics involved were staggering in their complexity, representing spatial relationships across cosmic distances. But something about the underlying structure seemed familiar. "It's not just showing hyperspace routes," she said slowly. "It's modeling the structure of reality itself." Her teammates exchanged glances that combined skepticism with growing interest. Maya's pattern recognition abilities had impressed their instructors, but this was her first real field test. "Explain," Captain Zextai commanded. Maya pointed to specific areas where energy streams intersected in complex nodes. "These aren't just navigation markers. They're points where the fundamental forces of the universe interact in ways that create stable pathways through higher dimensions. The architects didn't just discover hyperspace travel. They mapped the mathematical structure that makes faster-than-light physics possible." Dr. Kaylin's eyes widened. "If that's true, then this chamber contains the theoretical foundation for technologies we haven't even imagined yet." But activating the display had proven impossible, despite weeks of effort by the galaxy's most advanced xenotechnology specialists. The chamber responded to the presence of conscious observers by shifting its patterns slightly, but it remained stubbornly inactive. Maya spent the next several days studying the chamber from every angle, making detailed notes about pattern variations and attempting to understand the mathematical principles underlying the display. Unlike her teammates, who relied on sophisticated analytical equipment, she used only basic measuring tools and her own observations. "You're wasting time," Dexion told her on the fourth day. "This chamber requires technological interface capabilities that humans simply don't possess. Your pattern recognition might be useful for cataloging artifacts, but activating architect technology requires direct neural connection." Maya ignored him, focusing instead on subtle details that she was beginning to recognize as significant. The energy patterns weren't random fluctuations. They were responding to something specific about the observers in the chamber. That evening, she discussed her observations with Dr. Kaylin over their meal in the expedition's common area. "I think the chamber is waiting for a specific type of consciousness," Maya said. "Not technological capability or enhanced neural architecture, but a particular way of thinking about problems." "What do you mean?" the archaeologist asked. Maya struggled to find words for concepts that existed at the edge of her understanding. "The architects built this technology to interface with minds that could perceive mathematical relationships without technological assistance. They expected users to understand the patterns through pure reasoning rather than direct neural connection." Dr. Kalin leaned forward with obvious interest. You believe the chamber requires organic pattern recognition rather than technological interface? I think it requires something even more specific, Maya continued. It needs a mind that can see patterns in chaos, that can find order in systems too complex for conventional analysis. The architects might have been testing for a specific type of intelligence. The next morning, Maya entered the navigation chamber alone. Her teammates were conducting surveys on other levels, leaving her free to experiment without skeptical observers. She had formed a theory about the chamber's activation requirements, but testing it would require her to trust abilities she was only beginning to understand. Standing in the center of the chamber, Maya closed her eyes and let her mind process the subtle energy fluctuations around her. Without the distraction of visual input, she could sense patterns in the ambient field that surrounded the crystalline displays. The chamber was indeed waiting for something. Not technological activation or enhanced neural commands, but recognition. It wanted someone to understand what it was showing, to perceive the mathematical relationships that connected distant galaxies through higher dimensional space. Maya opened her eyes and began tracing patterns in the air above the central crystal matrix. She moved her hands in sequences that matched the mathematical progressions she had identified in the energy flows. To external observers, her movements would have appeared random, even ritualistic. But Maya was conducting a conversation in pure mathematics. The chamber responded immediately. Energy patterns that had remained static for weeks began to flow in new configurations. The crystalline displays activated with light that seemed to come from within the mathematical relationships themselves. The three-dimensional mandala expanded into configurations that filled the entire chamber with representations of cosmic structure. Maya found herself standing inside a working model of the universe's mathematical architecture. She could see how space and time folded around massive objects, creating the gravitational wells that made hyperspace travel possible. She could trace the pathways that connected distant galaxies through dimensions that existed perpendicular to normal space. But more than that, she could see the intelligence behind the system. The architects hadn't just mapped cosmic structure. They had embedded their own consciousness into the mathematical relationships that defined reality itself. The navigation chamber wasn't just a tool. It was a fragment of architect awareness, waiting for minds capable of understanding its purpose. Incredible, Dr. Kalin's voice came from behind her. The archaeologist had entered the chamber to find Maya surrounded by displays of unimaginable complexity. How did you activate it? I didn't activate it, Maya replied, her voice filled with wonder. I recognized it. The chamber doesn't respond to commands or interface protocols. It responds to understanding. Captain Zextai and the rest of the team arrived within minutes, drawn by alerts from their monitoring equipment. They found Maya manipulating displays that showed the locations of undiscovered civilizations, pathways to galaxies beyond the current boundaries of explored space, and mathematical principles that could revolutionize galactic technology. This is impossible, Silvara said, her molecular manipulation abilities proving useless in the face of technology that operated on pure mathematical principles. No first-year student should be capable of interfacing with architect systems. She's not interfacing with it, Dr. Kalin observed with growing excitement. She's communicating with it. The architects designed this chamber to respond to minds that could understand their mathematical language without technological assistance. Maya continued working with the displays, discovering control mechanisms that existed as pure conceptual relationships rather than physical interfaces. The chamber showed her things that stretched the boundaries of her understanding, civilizations that existed in parallel dimensions, technologies that manipulated the fundamental constants of physics, and threats to galactic stability that the core had never imagined. There's something else, Maya said, her voice tight with concern. The chamber is showing me why the architects disappeared. They didn't die out or transcend to higher dimensions. They encountered something that forced them to abandon this galaxy entirely. The displays shifted to show cosmic-scale movements at the galaxy's edge, patterns of destruction that moved through star systems like a cosmic plague. The architects had built their navigation network not just to enable exploration, but as an early warning system for threats that operated on galactic scales. The system is detecting something, Maya continued, her hands moving through mathematical configurations that conveyed urgency. The same force that drove the architects away. It's returning to this galaxy. Captain Zextai activated his emergency communications array, transmitting priority alerts to core headquarters. The discovery of active architect technology was significant enough. But Maya's interpretation of the chamber's warnings suggested implications that went far beyond archaeological research. "How long do we have?" he asked. Maya consulted displays that showed the mathematical progression of the approaching threat. The calculations involved forces that operated beyond conventional physics, entities that consumed the mathematical structures underlying reality itself. "Maybe 50 years, she said. "The chamber is designed to provide advance warning so that civilizations can prepare defenses, but I don't think anyone has ever successfully resisted this force before." The implications were staggering. Maya had not only activated architect technology that had remained dormant for millions of years, but she had also discovered evidence of a cosmic-scale threat that could destroy galactic civilization. Her pattern recognition abilities had uncovered information that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. But as Maya continued working with the navigation chamber, she began to realize that her connection to the architect systems was deeper than anyone had suspected. The chamber wasn't just responding to her analytical abilities, it was recognizing something in human consciousness that matched patterns the architects had been searching for. "The architects knew," she said, her voice filled with awe. "They knew that someday a species would emerge that could understand their mathematics without technological enhancement. They built all of this as a test, waiting for minds that could see patterns in chaos." Dr. Kalin stared at Maya with an expression that combined wonder and fear. "Are you saying that humanity was the species they were waiting for?" Maya nodded slowly, still processing the implications of what the chamber was showing her. "Not just humanity. Any species that developed intelligence through pattern recognition rather than technological enhancement. The architects were looking for minds that could understand the universe's mathematical structure through pure reasoning." The chamber's displays showed her more. Hidden architect facilities throughout the galaxy, each one containing technology that could be activated only by consciousness that matched specific criteria. Humanity's analytical capabilities weren't just useful for solving complex problems. They were the key to accessing a technological inheritance that could transform galactic civilization. But with that inheritance came responsibility. The approaching threat that had driven the architects away wouldn't be defeated by superior technology or exotic abilities. It would require something uniquely human, the stubborn refusal to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. Maya stood in the center of the navigation chamber, surrounded by mathematical representations of cosmic structure and galactic history. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Academy, she understood exactly why she belonged there. Not as a quota fill or diplomatic necessity, but as a representative of humanity's greatest strength. The galaxy didn't just need human analytical abilities, it needed human determination, the uniquely human capacity to find patterns in impossibility and solutions in chaos. Maya Chen, the overlooked girl from Earth Station 7, had become the key to accessing technologies that could save civilization itself. But first, she had to convince the galaxy that humanity was ready for such responsibility. The Emergency Council convened 3 days after Maya's discovery, bringing together the most powerful leaders in galactic civilization. Maya stood before representatives of 100 worlds in the Corps' highest security facility, deep within the fortress moon that protected the galactic capital. Fleet Admiral Threshkar, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Corps, studied the data from Kereth Prime with an expression that conveyed both amazement and deep concern. The ancient Zephyrian's ability to phase through dimensions made him nearly immortal, but even his vast experience hadn't prepared him for Maya's revelations. "Let me understand this correctly. Cadet Chen," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "You've activated architect technology that has been dormant for 50 million years, and this technology is warning us of an imminent galactic-scale threat?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied, struggling to keep her voice steady in the presence of beings whose individual decisions affected the lives of trillions. "The navigation chamber on Kereth Prime is part of an early warning network. The approaching force operates beyond conventional physics, consuming the mathematical relationships that make reality stable." Director Vexitaler of Galactic Intelligence leaned forward, her crystalline structure refracting light in patterns that indicated intense calculation. "Our xenopsychology experts have analyzed your interaction with the architect systems. They report that you achieved a level of interface that should be theoretically impossible for any organic consciousness." Maya felt the weight of hundreds of alien gazes upon her. In the weeks since her return from Kereth Prime, she had become the subject of intense scientific study. Teams of specialists had tested her abilities, mapped her neural patterns, and subjected her to psychological evaluations that probed the depths of her consciousness. "I didn't interface with the chamber in any technological sense," Maya explained. "I recognized patterns in its mathematical structure and responded accordingly. The architects designed their systems to activate only when encountered by consciousness, capable of understanding the underlying principles without external assistance." "And you believe humanity possesses this capability?" Admiral Threshkar asked. "I believe humanity represents exactly the type of intelligence the architects were waiting for," Maya replied with growing confidence. "We evolved on a world that required constant adaptation to changing conditions. We learned to survive through pattern recognition and analytical thinking rather than genetic specialization or technological enhancement." Counselor Yisandra of the Altarian Collective activated a holographic display showing Maya's test results from Nexus Academy. "Your academic records indicate superior pattern recognition abilities, but nothing that would suggest access to cosmic-scale technologies." "Because I was never tested under the right conditions," Maya said. "Conventional intelligence measurements assume that consciousness operates through technological interface or enhanced neural architecture. But the architects were looking for minds that could perceive mathematical relationships through pure reasoning." The debate continued for hours as representatives from major civilizations struggled to understand implications that challenged their fundamental assumptions about intelligence and technology. Maya found herself defending not just her own abilities, but humanity's potential role in galactic civilization. General Kothvar of the Hive Collective expressed the skepticism that many felt. "You're asking us to believe that a species barely capable of interstellar travel has been chosen to access technologies that predate our oldest civilizations. I'm asking you to consider that technological advancement and cosmic awareness aren't necessarily connected," Maya replied. "The architects reached a level of understanding that allowed them to embed consciousness into mathematical relationships. They weren't looking for technological sophistication. They were looking for minds that could think the way they thought." Professor Kethvar from Nexus Academy had been called to testify about Maya's academic performance. "Cadet Chen's analytical capabilities are indeed remarkable," he confirmed. "She approaches problems through pure reasoning rather than technological assistance. This methodology has proven effective in situations where conventional interface protocols fail." But the real test of Maya's claims came when she was asked to demonstrate her abilities. The Council had transported a selection of dormant architect artifacts from sites throughout the galaxy, devices that had resisted analysis by the most advanced xenotechnology specialists for centuries. Maya approached the first artifact, a crystalline sphere similar to the one she had encountered during her examination at Nexus Academy. But this device was far more complex, its surfaces covered with mathematical symbols that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This artifact was discovered on Veltara Prime, Director Vex Talar explained. It has been studied extensively, but no one has been able to determine its function or operating principles. Maya studied the device carefully, noting patterns in the multi-dimensional symbols that reminded her of the mathematical progressions she had encountered in the navigation chamber. The artifact wasn't just a tool, it was a test, designed to identify consciousness capable of understanding architect mathematics. She began tracing patterns in the air above the device, her movements following mathematical sequences that described the relationships between space, time, and consciousness. To the assembled observers, her gestures appeared ritualistic, even primitive. But Maya was conducting a conversation in the universal language of mathematics. The artifact responded by projecting a holographic display that filled the council chamber with representations of cosmic structure. But these weren't just static images. They were working models that responded to Maya's continued mathematical inputs, demonstrating principles of physics that the galaxy's greatest scientists had only theorized about. Incredible, Admiral Threshkar murmured. You've activated a cosmic simulator that our best researchers couldn't even identify as technological. Maya continued working with the device, discovering controls that existed as pure conceptual relationships. The artifact showed her how consciousness itself could be used as a computational tool, how awareness could be focused and directed to solve problems that exceeded any technological capability. But more importantly, it showed her something that made her blood run cold. The approaching threat that had driven the architects from the galaxy wasn't just a physical force. It was something that consumed consciousness itself, entities that fed on the mathematical relationships between mind and reality. The Devourers, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. The architects called them the Devourers. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the patterns that connect consciousness to the physical universe. The council chamber fell silent as Maya manipulated the cosmic simulator to show the progress of the approaching threat. The Devourers moved through space like a living darkness, leaving behind regions where the mathematical constants that supported life and consciousness became unstable. According to the architect records, Maya continued, the Devourers have consumed thousands of galaxies over cosmic timescales. They follow patterns of galactic evolution, appearing when civilizations reach sufficient complexity to generate the type of consciousness they feed upon. Director Vex Talar's crystalline structure flickered with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. Are you saying that the development of galactic civilization itself attracts these entities? I'm saying that the architects discovered this pattern and spent millions of years trying to find a solution, Maya replied. They built their technology network as both an early warning system and a test, searching for consciousness that could understand their mathematical principles well enough to access defensive technologies. She activated additional functions of the cosmic simulator, revealing hidden aspects of architect engineering that had been embedded throughout the galaxy. Ancient installations that appeared to be simple ruins actually contained dormant defense systems. Hyperspace lanes that enabled galactic commerce were also components of a vast computational network designed to coordinate resistance against the Devourers. The entire galactic infrastructure is an architect weapon system, Maya explained, but it requires specific types of consciousness to activate and control. The architects didn't abandon the galaxy. They integrated themselves into its mathematical structure, waiting for minds that could understand their legacy and continue their work. Admiral Threshkar rose from his chair, his massive form seeming to fill the chamber. What you're describing would require cooperation between species that have competed for resources and territory for millennia. The political complexity alone would be staggering. The alternative is the complete destruction of consciousness itself, Maya replied. The Devourers don't just consume physical matter. They unravel the mathematical relationships that make awareness possible. Every thinking being in the galaxy is at risk. The debate that followed revealed the fundamental challenges that Maya's discovery presented to galactic civilization. Activating the Architect Defense Network would require unprecedented cooperation between species with conflicting interests and incompatible worldviews. More problematically, it would require acknowledging that humanity, the galaxy's newest and supposedly weakest member species, possessed capabilities that more advanced civilizations lacked. Counselor Yisandra expressed the concerns that many representatives felt. Even if we accept your interpretation of architect intentions, how can we entrust galactic defense to a species that has barely mastered interstellar travel? Because we're the species the architects specifically selected for this purpose, Maya replied with growing conviction. Human consciousness developed through constant adaptation to unpredictable environments. We learn to find patterns in chaos, to solve problems through pure reasoning rather than technological shortcuts. She activated another function of the cosmic simulator, showing how human analytical capabilities matched the mathematical requirements for controlling architect technology. The demonstration revealed that while other species had evolved specialized abilities that made them superior in specific domains, humanity had developed generalized pattern recognition that could adapt to any situation. The architects weren't looking for technological superiority or exotic abilities, Maya continued. They were looking for consciousness that could understand their mathematical language and adapt it to changing circumstances. They were looking for minds that could think like they thought. Professor Kethvar supported Maya's claims with data from Nexus Academy. Human students consistently demonstrate abilities that seem unremarkable until they're tested against problems that resist conventional solutions. They approach challenges through methodologies that other species consider primitive. But these methodologies prove effective in situations where technological approaches fail. The Council spent 3 more days debating Maya's revelations before reaching a decision. The evidence was overwhelming. Maya had accessed architect technology that had remained dormant for millions of years, and this technology revealed threats that could destroy galactic civilization. But accepting the implications required fundamental changes to how the galaxy understood intelligence, technology, and humanity's role in cosmic affairs. Fleet Admiral Threshkar delivered the Council's final verdict. The Galactic Defense Corps hereby authorizes the formation of a new command structure specifically designed to investigate and implement architect defensive technologies. This command will be designated the Pattern Recognition Division, and it will be led by individuals capable of interfacing with architect systems. Maya felt her heart racing as the implications became clear. Sir? Cadet Chen, you are hereby promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Commander and assigned as Director of Pattern Recognition Operations, Admiral Threshkar announced. You will have authority to recruit personnel from any species or organization, access to unlimited resources, and command responsibility for preparing galactic defenses against the approaching threat. The promotion was unprecedented. Maya had jumped from first-year cadet to senior command position in a matter of weeks, based entirely on abilities that she was still learning to understand. Around the council chamber, representatives from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were committing to support a human teenager's interpretation of 50-million-year-old warnings. But Maya understood the deeper significance of what was happening. The galaxy wasn't just acknowledging her individual capabilities, It was recognizing that humanity represented something new in galactic civilization, consciousness that could bridge the gap between technological advancement and cosmic understanding. Over the following months, Maya found herself at the center of the galaxy's largest mobilization since the last great war against the hegemon empire. Teams of specialists were assembled to study architect sites throughout inhabited space. Human analysts were recruited from universities and research institutions across Earth's colonies, their pattern recognition abilities proving essential for activating dormant architect technology. Maya established her headquarters on Nexus Station, the massive orbital facility that coordinated Corps operations throughout the galaxy. Her command center became a fusion of human analytical methods and alien technological capabilities, staffed by beings from dozens of species working together to understand architect mathematics. The work was exhausting and exhilarating. Every day brought new discoveries as architect installations throughout the galaxy came online under human activation. Ancient hyperspace lanes revealed hidden defensive capabilities. Routine archaeological sites turned out to contain components of galactic-scale weapon systems. The very infrastructure of interstellar civilization was transforming into something the architects had designed for a war that spanned cosmic timescales. But Maya also faced challenges that had nothing to do with architect technology. Many species still struggled to accept humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Political factions questioned whether such enormous resources should be devoted to preparing for threats that might never materialize. Military commanders who had spent centuries learning conventional warfare found themselves dependent on human pattern recognition specialists for strategic planning. "You've accomplished something remarkable," Admiral Threshkar told Maya during one of their regular briefings. "You've united the galaxy around a common purpose. But the real test will come when we face the Devourers themselves." Maya studied the tactical displays that showed preparations throughout inhabited space. Millions of beings were working to implement defensive systems based on architect mathematics. Fleets were being reorganized according to strategic principles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Entire worlds were being transformed into components of a galactic defense network. "The architects planned for this," she replied. "They knew that consciousness capable of understanding their mathematics would eventually emerge. They built their entire civilization around preparing for this moment." But as the months passed and the defensive preparations continued, Maya began to understand something that filled her with both hope and terror. The approaching Devourers weren't just a threat to galactic civilization. They were a test, a cosmic-scale examination that would determine whether consciousness itself could evolve beyond the patterns that had defined it for billions of years. The architects had left humanity more than just defensive technologies. They had left instructions for transcending the limitations that made consciousness vulnerable to the Devourers in the first place. But implementing those instructions would require changes to the fundamental nature of awareness itself. Maya stood in her command center, surrounded by displays that showed the mathematical structure of reality and the approaching darkness that threatened to consume it. She was no longer the overlooked girl who had struggled to prove herself at Nexus Academy. She had become something new, a bridge between human consciousness and cosmic understanding, the key to accessing powers that could reshape the universe itself. The galaxy had accepted humanity not despite its limitations, but because of them. Human analytical capabilities weren't just useful for solving complex problems. They were the foundation for a new type of consciousness, one that could understand the universe's mathematical structure and use that understanding to transcend the patterns that had trapped previous civilizations. As Maya prepared for the coming confrontation with forces that operated beyond conventional physics, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from Earth Station 7 to the center of galactic command. She had started as a quota admission, a token representative of humanity's minimal contribution to galactic civilization. But she had discovered that humanity's contribution wasn't minimal at all. It was essential, the missing piece that the architects had spent millions of years waiting for. Human consciousness represented evolution's answer to cosmic-scale threats, the development of awareness that could adapt to any challenge through pure reasoning and stubborn determination. The devourers were coming, entities that had consumed countless galaxies over cosmic time. But they had never encountered anything like human consciousness before. Minds that could see patterns in impossibility and find solutions in chaos. Maya Chen, the girl who had been overlooked by everyone except the universe itself, would lead the galaxy's first real chance at victory against forces that fed on consciousness itself. The galaxy's elite academy had taught her many things, but the most important lesson had come from the architects themselves, that the greatest strength wasn't exotic abilities or technological advancement, but the simple human capacity to understand the universe through mathematics and refuse to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. The war for consciousness itself was about to begin, and humanity would lead the fight.